Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Bog Panda. Tonight, Kelly and I are going to talk about two things that are near and dear to our heart. The first, Barney video games. The second, Kiss movies. I am Dr. Mike at Official Pagan on everything. And joining me, as always,
Hi, everybody. This is Kelly. I must have missed the meeting tool at KELLITHUL on Twitter and Instagram. And if you get a moment, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you'd subscribe to the channel, really helps us out in terms of the algorithm and all the good stuff. Watch a couple videos, give us some likes on the ones you like, leave us comments, help us understand what you like, what type of content you like, what you'd like to see, whether you agree with us, whether you disagree with us, all that kind of good stuff. Very helpful. If you're in a rush, go to Hard No. It's a playlist that's on the Bog Panda YouTube channel, and that's the world's shortest podcast. So you can manage your time efficiently. So check out Hard No. And now we'll return to the regular show where Kelly's going to learn a little more about why Barney's with us for this episode.
you know what? We'll just skip right to Kiss. Kelly,
Good.
you're a Kiss guy, right?
Oh, yeah. So I was there was a period of time, and so I think we've chronicled on the show, much to everyone's fascination, I'm sure, that I was, gigantic Alice Cooper fan, going to concerts, loving his stuff, remained a fan. Raise Your Fist and Yell came out. It was like poison. I had to, and not the good kind of poison. Then I had to take a break from Alice for a little bit. But I still loved his earlier work. Just didn't like Raise Your Fist and Yell, and then returned, and am all the better for it. And now just back to catching Alice all the time. Forgave him for his indiscretion on Raise Your Fist and Yell. Kiss made it through, I think, Dynasty. So I actually did buy the Dynasty album, and the end, and that was done with there. And their catalog is ultimately, upon multiple listens, maybe a little simple on that. It's okay. I mean, I like the live album. I like both live albums. They're pretty good. Good rock and roll. Love Gun's not a bad album. So very long thing to say. I dabble in Kiss. So sounds bad,
That's
but
fair. That's fair.
you?
Less so. I'm a little bit younger than you. I don't think it's too much of an age gap, but even by the time I was introduced to Kiss, they had kind of already settled in, maybe prematurely, to that legacy band thing of just touring on the hits and not making any new music. In fact, I think Kiss has only released like two studio albums in the last 30 years, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so they weren't an ongoing active concern at that point. They were just a touring act on their endless farewell tour. So I missed kind of the boat where Kiss was a thriving entity. And there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. It's just that growing up and discovering music, I was looking for bands that were putting new things out, and Kiss wasn't anymore at that point. So while I'm familiar with the hits and stuff, I actually learned more about Kiss from Kelly because we did a review of Ace's solo record. So that was the most I probably ever delved in anything Kiss related, except the Kiss movies. That is the exception to it. I'm a big fan of all of their movies. So the first, of course, as happens in most franchises, if you want to call it that, the Kiss, Phantom of the Park, Attack of the Phantoms, depending on which version of it you watch. Kelly sent me this really cool YouTube video, and it's definitely something I was excited to talk about in here. I think first and foremost, what is your thoughts on this movie to begin with?
So it's painfully hideous. It's um if Donnie and Marie, it has like a, I keep waiting for Donnie and Marie to kind of show up in it, because it just feels like that's what it's about to happen. It would have nothing to do with the plot or whatever, but it just feels like it. They shot a lot of it at Magic Mountain amusement park, which felt like maybe amusement park was on its last legs, dying. So we'll film Kiss here, and not much of a plot, zero acting, and so it's one of those things that do you watch it because it's bad? Yeah, I can do that. But I was very fired up upon hearing that originally it was going to be coming out. Massively disappointed upon consuming it for the first time. With the exception of Rip and Destroy, which was a reworked Kiss song that they got the robot Kiss guys were singing it or something. But anyway, outside of Rip and Destroy, not a fan. You, however, have a little more enthusiasm for this.
I do. So this was something I had heard about and not seen. Again, all my Kiss information was already secondhand in a way because they were already on their greatest hits farewell leg of their last 30 years by the time I discovered them. But I'd heard about this, and then they put out a DVD box set called Kisstory, I believe, or some pun with Kiss in the name. And I saw it at Walmart for a really good price. And it included the theatrical version of this movie. So in America, this was released as a TV special in a edited down form. So I've never seen that version of it. I know there's bootlegs of it you can find on the internet that all the kids are using these days, pretty widely available. But there is a feature length version that apparently has more of a plot line to it. I don't know that makes it better, to be honest with like, I'm not sure if taking out some of the extra story stuff might even make it better and might make it go by a little bit quicker, but it's bad in a really fun and astounding kind of way. The other Kiss movies I should mention after this. So they made a movie called Detroit Rock City, which is entirely based around a Kiss concert and kids trying to get to a Kiss concert, which features Kiss and all of their music and everything. And they also did a Kiss meets Scooby-Doo movie. Both of those are actually way better from in any imaginable way from a technical standpoint than this movie is. But as a fan of bad movies, I do lean pretty heavily onto this. And I was able to get it as part of that Kisstory box set, the only Kiss product that I own. And it included this, the theatrical movie of this, and a concert of theirs in Philadelphia in their prime in like late 70s when they were really commercially at their height. So that was pretty much all I needed from Kiss, I felt like. And there's some other stuff on there too, but I mean, it's the movie and a full concert in my hometown. So pretty much, summed up everything I was curious about for Kiss in one spot. But Kelly sent me this great video, and it's a Kiss fan who's learning After Effects, or at least that's what he's purporting in the video. I didn't delve into it, so like I don't know if that's an act that he's putting on and knows how to use After Effects, and this is his way into tutorials, because I've seen things like that too. But he's giving sort of a tutorial while he learns himself on some After Effects things, and he's trying to fix the Kiss Phantom of the Park, Kiss meets the Phantom movie, or at least fix some of the visual effects in it by replacing them in After Effects with with some new assets. So in a broader sense, what are your thoughts on going back? Because this is a fan thing, but going back and making changes to existing movies. As a sci-fi fan, of course, Star Wars has been endlessly meddled with, and you see it to a smaller degree in some other movies. Star Wars, of course, being the most egregious.
Yeah, I mean So on its face, I'm not against it. I don't think it's necessary. It's what you do, how far you go, why you did it, kind of stuff that'll affect me. So there are parts in the Star Wars, it's been covered ad nauseum on other YouTube channels, so we won't kind of go through. There were parts that were completely unnecessary to adjust, and then there were other things to kind of go, okay, like the cantina scene, maybe polishing that up because they pretty much had to do that on a pretty low budget to begin with. So maybe a little tweak or two there, but some of the nonsense that they put in there just because they could, I wasn't a big fan of. But I don't mind if it makes it better. The greatest movie of all time, Army of Darkness, I think would benefit with a little bit of, when we have Bruce Campbell, spoiler alert for Army of Darkness gang, when all the little Bruce Campbells erupt from big Bruce Campbell, the special effects for that are of the era and not particularly strong. Funny scene, but you've got to really work hard not to to suspend your disbelief for the whole thing, because it's pretty not great visual effects. I'd love to see that cleaned up. I've seen a fantastic, and we'll include a link to it in the video description if I can find it, a fantastic remake of the Obi-Wan Kenobi Darth Vader, original Obi-Wan Kenobi Darth Vader lightsaber fight on the Death Star. That's just amazing, and it makes you totally buy that Ben Solo or that Obi-Wan Kenobi still got his skills, and then Darth Vader still has his, and is more in line with the badass that kind of took everybody out in Rogue One at the end of it. Fantastic. But as opposed to what we got in, the A New Hope, where it's kind of like if Mike and I were laser sword fighting with broomsticks, because it was just a little stiff, a little awkward,
making the sounds with our mouths as we're doing.
Yes. Yeah, just wasn't quite. Sir Alec Guinness, amazing actor, not gonna do a backflip for you anytime soon. So he was that wasn't necessarily good. And then I think the big Australian bodybuilder that they had doing Vader, I think at that point in time, also wasn't necessarily particularly adept at moving around. So that's a really long answer to, yeah, I'm okay with it. How do you feel about it? And has Evil, I know there have been many iterations of Evil Bong, different variations, but has anyone ever gone back in? Have you been tempted to go in and master that a little further, that you just knew if there were a few dewbacks in the background on Evil Bong that it would be a better movie?
So with Evil Bong, one of the things about it that I've always had an issue with, there are two things really. It was shot in 35 millimeter, which makes it difficult to go back and do things. It's cool that we shot a movie in the 2000s on 35 millimeter, because that wasn't a thing at the time, but you learn really quickly how impractical that is, and that ate up about half of the budget of the movie. So considering how much we were able to accomplish on such a small budget, that movie could have been significantly larger in scope if we had twice as much of that money to actually put on screen. So that I wasn't a huge fan of. There are a lot of like animated transitions in Evil Bong, which had to do with having to hit a particular time frame for the distributor, Warner Brothers. I would like to see those redone at some point. So Evil Bong Remastered was released recently, and this wasn't like a planned plug or anything like that, because I don't, have anything to do with it. As far as the remastering, I haven't seen it yet. I'm glad it exists, though. There is a remastered one finally. It's on Blu-ray finally. One of the things that's really bothered me is that until recently, the original Evil Bong was never available on Blu-ray, which made zero sense, especially because it was shot on 35 millimeter. I could see if it was shot in like a lot of, lower budget movies are shot on kind of lower end equipment, and they're really just being upscaled for Blu-ray because they weren't that great of quality to begin with. But this was actually shot on 35 millimeters, so there was no excuse not to do it. And I think it was just because they were so busy repackaging the DVD 8,000 times. Again, I have nothing to do with that. 8,000 times. Then nobody actually went back and did a Blu-ray master of it until recently. So I haven't seen it yet, but I'm looking forward to it. For the most part, though, I've been lucky enough to work on a handful of movies. They're all over the place in quality, I would say, and my involvement varies on some of them. Some of them I just helped out with a couple of things, and some of them I was really hands-on. They're not all great looking, but I think the reason that whenever I decide to work on movies I'm able to is they were all profitable. And that's where, to me, to come back and do it to a smaller movie wouldn't necessarily make a lot of sense, because profit margin is really what it's all about. So like, just to destroy some things in people's psyches. At the time we were making Evil Bong, Warner Brothers was going through a really big issue with the Transformers movies. The Transformers movies were awful for them financially. Those were disasters. Those movies, they made no money off of those. They lost tons of money off of the first few. but they had to keep making them and perpetuating it until they finally pushed it into profit because they had just gone too far in the amount of money they had spent on it. The first Transformers movie was like a year over production timeline and tens of millions of dollars over budget, to the point where it just becomes impossible for things like that to make money. But they had to keep pumping them out because the only way to make money was off the back end of video sales, licensing to TV channels, and merchandising. So they had to keep pumping out these losing movies. So even though they made these huge box office hauls, Warner Brothers was just taking enormous financial hits on these things. Whereas Evil Bong cost a couple $100,000 to make, and there's 85 of them now. It's been put on to more products than almost Kiss at this point. So our profit margin wise, we stomped the entire Transformers franchise into the ground like it was nothing. Not dollar wise, but in terms of profit. One of Warner Brothers' probably most profitable franchises. And I'm including Lord of the Rings in that because Lord of the Rings put its production company out of business. New Line went bankrupt when Lord of the Rings came out in theaters. And those movies each made $1 billion. And it actually took the company under because they had invested so much money into it. So a lot of people think dollar amounts are what goes for those things, but it's really profit margins. So that's why like Avatar is constantly being talked about now, because even as big as it is, Disney and Fox have a huge amount of money invested in this. So it's not just Avatar 2 making money, 3 and 4 have to come out and make money as well. Yep. So those are big, risky kind of moves, whereas like putting a couple $100,000 into a stoner movie and selling 1 million DVDs at back then $35 a pop is an easy investment to make a return on. So I think on the size and scale of stuff that I work on, it wouldn't make sense to go back, and regardless of the artistic elements of it, financially it wouldn't make sense because the strength of the things I work on is we make them for nothing. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say Phantom of the Park was made for nothing.
It sure looks like it. Looks like the kind of starter pack video effects applied throughout the whole thing. And so this guy does upgrade it. I do believe he's being genuine. He's not trying to sneak in tutoring time on this. I think he says he's a graphic designer, but not a video effects artist. So he's gonna have an edge over most of us, that he understands how some of the more sophisticated visual tools work, and some of it'll translate between Photoshop and those types of things and a video editor. But so I think it gives him a little bit of a leg up, but a lot of it was due to him. So but yeah, I can't imagine it was worth a lot. So so there are at least 2, and there may be more. His channel is called Kiss Army Things. We'll include a link to it. You definitely need to check it out. The gentleman is a much more genuine and sincere Kiss fan than either Mike or I.
I mean, I love this movie, just probably not for the reasons that Kiss wanted people to love it.
Yeah, and he seems like a real creative guy, interesting, good delivery. And I've seen at least 2 of these related to, one was a fight scene, which is a little bit longer. And then this one, which was the first time Kiss appears in the movie, and they kind of appear from space. And I was reminded again how ridiculous this
I was going to say, just saying it out loud, doesn't it sound ridiculous?
Because when you have, the whole thing, what exactly, so of everyone in Kiss, always my least favorite was Paul Stanley by like, miles.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Really never but cared for his stage presence, because it seemed like he was just whining all the time, saying, "Oh, come on, now come on." And just,
that was a pretty accurate impression.
Yeah, it was, the fact that I can accurately impersonate him tells you something right there. And so never cared for him. And then in the movie, even further reinforced, because he's just the most jacked up one, in that his eye can help him hear better on occasion, and also
the laser he shoots from his eye to hear better.
and it also creates transportation. So that in this first scene where they're all showing up, there's like a laser beam comes out of his eye that now a much smaller Paul Stanley turns around and walks down to get to the stage, and so it makes no sense at all.
Yeah. So for my birthday every year, I make everybody watch a bunch of movies with me. And this past year when I turned 40, I did musicals or movies that I consider musicals that like this. This is technically a musical. Kiss plays like 7 or 8 songs in the theatrical version. I don't know if the shorter one it's as many, but there's 7 or 8 full on musical numbers. So it's a musical. Literally in that open scene where Paul Stanley walks down the laser, my wife turns to me, and is like, how is he walking down the laser if he shot out the laser?
Yeah, there's lots of problems with the whole.
I was like, shh, don't ruin it for me.
Yeah, it was just, and it made no sense. And so Kiss Army Things, he just basically pulled that whole thing out. He's revised it. I could make this look a little bit better visually, but it just makes no sense. And
right,
he took it out, which is, I think, the best adjustment he made in there. Although he did some really cool stuff on the other side. But these are pretty cool to watch. So you got to check it out. One, you'll get a flavor of what the original was all about, and then how it could have been made a little less visually unpleasant. But ultimately, it's still Kiss appearing in space, in the air above the stadium when they're introduced, and then
as they do at real shows.
Yeah, very much almost the exact same entrance. So.
Giant Paul Stanley shoots his hearing laser out of his eye, and smaller Paul Stanley walks down it.
Yeah, it's a mess. So let us know your thoughts if this the Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, if it's one of your favorite movies or not, or your thoughts on it. Your thoughts on traveling on space lasers to get shot out of your eye where you shrink and they can walk down it. I just don't think. Let us know if we're wrong about Paul Stanley. Spoiler, we're not. He's horrible. Last of the group of Kiss.
If you think that Paul Stanley's good, go listen to his new solo stuff.
Bog Panda.